Go. Good evening. I see I have one person here. Welcome. Just doing an impromptu because I wanted to make sure if you weren't able to see where that location was where I put the vinyl vault video, I want to make sure I brought it to you here. It's in the about section of the page where you go to the about area, and it's in the it's in the text there, but unfortunately it's not a hot link, so you have to copy and paste it. But the one I just put up there, hey Jason, the one I just put up there, that is the link to the Vinyl Vault video from Chad. So that's for you all to watch, the subscribers to watch from now. I'll won't make it public till probably this weekend. So give you all a chance to take a look at it first. It's about, I don't know, 10, 12 minutes, something like that. But thanks for joining. Yeah, it was, it was in a lot of ways, just the whole business as a whole, really. I mean, I've been in a lot of manufacturing plants, so that doesn't quite have the same oohs and ahs as it has over time. You get kind of used to them. But I've been to some pressing plants before, but talking to the people and learning their stories and listening to how they do what they do there really was what was the most interesting beyond the physical side of it. And I was commenting. I think I've never heard the word customer used more, by people in operation at all levels of whether it was in the offices or whether it was in the plating department or in the pressing department or in the packaging department and the warehouse. They're really customer focused. What their roles are and what impact they have on what happens as far as what the customer gets. So that's a culture, and that's a developed culture uh, based on experience and expectation, I would say. And I think that comes really honestly, it comes directly from Chad. He knows his customers well. I think he understands who they are and what they want. I mean, that doesn't mean that he's all things to all people. There are things that he, won't do that he, could do, but that's not really where he's at and his comfort zone and what kind of music he likes or what kind of music he thinks deserves audiophile treatment. So that's one of the reasons he keeps it where he does. And you'll learn this through the videos as as they evolve. There's at least two more that are coming. Tomorrow's a new drop tomorrow evening. So you'll learn this as you go through watching the videos and getting that perspective from him. So like I said, I think that it's it's the sum of the parts, the way it all works together. And again, that's not to say mistakes aren't made. That's not to say that they're perfect. It's just that the journey they're on and the processes they go through and the work they do seems very cohesive in terms of what their focus is, and that's really important for any company, is to have a collaborative, cohesive focus among its employees. It's kind of like sports, right? Like a baseball team or a football team or whatever. If they're not hitting on all cylinders in the same direction toward a goal, usually you get sloppy play, you get bad results. There's guys that want to hot dog it and be the most important person in the room, and then they're hot dogging it, and then somebody pulls the ball out of their arms and runs with it the other way. So I think all of that is part of the formula that's needed in order to do what they do. And part of what gets done, which really is the kind of the the nucleus of the actual analog productions and pressing of the product, their product, is this whole idea of licensing and the relationships that Chad has. He bought out Classic Records, and he's taken the cream of the crop and trying to then bring that through. And there's a lot of issues in licensing. I mean, just because you have the plates for something doesn't mean you can't just start pressing it if you don't have the authorization and the licensing to pay for, for the rights to do that. So there's a whole dance, that has to occur for that to happen as well. So as I said earlier, the link that's there that I put up, that's the link to the Vinyl Vault that is being made to you subscribers to have a preview of that before it goes public into whether it'll be a standalone as it is now or into another video. I'm not sure, but this one's just the Vinyl Vault, and really kind of kept it down to my walkthrough of it and just a little discussion at the end, and that's it. But this is really it's one I'm sure I know there are other plants that do great jobs as well. So they have an approach in terms of the way they do what they do. They have a market. They have they run a lot of older equipment, which is it's a measured decision whether you're going to buy brand new automated equipment or whether you're going to buy the tried and trues and then maintain them, which is what they do. And there's pluses and minuses to both sides of that equation. There isn't always a right or wrong answer. I certainly feel that there's certain things that Chad is a lot more comfortable with than other things, and he stays in his lane. He stays in his comfort zone and stays, and that's not a criticism. It's just someone who knows who they are, know what they want, know what their customers want, and kind of works hard to do well in that space and doesn't try to be all things to all people. Acoustic Sounds as the selling part, they offer a lot of other things, obviously beyond their own products through Analog Products and what they press. So there's other things that he finds of quality to offer through their website. And, they've got this thing where if you spend $49 or more, it's free shipping, which is great, at least in the US. I know the Canadians and everywhere else in the world, you all have different challenges with that. And I unfortunately, that's the way it is. I think I read something today where people in Canada thought that maybe if he offered USPS capability to get up there, it would be cheaper. I don't know a lot about that aspect of things, but I've added it to my list of things to maybe just ask about. But I do know that part of the concern when you pick shipping methods is getting it safely and well received to the customer as well. So I don't know if that's a concern they have about the capability of that service or not. But if you have any questions, feel free to type them in. Again, that link that's there is for the Vinyl Vault. And I wanted to make sure you saw it. I put it in the About section of my page. That was the one place I could tell everybody at least could get to, because different platforms, whether you're on an iPad or you're on a phone or you're on a PC or whatever you're on Mac, it displays somewhat differently the getting to different things. So I thought I'll just put it in the About because everybody can get to that. The problem is, like on an iPad, you can't really easily copy paste out of that thing, apparently, is what it looks like. So it's crazy. What is one piece of advice you would offer regarding his business? A change to the staffing model? It's a great question, Jason. I didn't look at it as deeply as I would if I was truly consulting someone. There were some processes in the factory that I felt like they. You see, the thing is, when you're small and you have people that do things and you trust and they know what they're doing and whatever, you can things run and there sometimes are no electronic checks and balances on certain kind of equipment in terms of whether it's time or temperatures or whatever, and some of those things can get off over time, and they do need to be validated and even calibrated. In today's world, some of that stuff's easier to replace than it is to calibrate, but I think a lot of times people feel like it either works or it doesn't, but some of those things, they have sensors, and sensors can weaken and go bad. So there's some things I think in that genre, and that isn't uncommon in smaller companies. at all. So, you know, there's just I didn't really like delve into the processes deeply enough to make you know that kind of an assessment. But I do know that the approach they're taking in terms of the processes they have in terms of like the manual processes like packaging and stuffing records and that I can see where they've tried to really try to minimize the chance of errors in those processes. So that's really good because I think we've all heard and saw, you know, somebody got two side two, you know, two album number twos or two album number ones or whatever in these sets and things. And they, you know, and it's like, oh, it's crazy. And those kind of things, I'm not exactly sure how they happen. It tends to make me think that they stage stacks of things and then they stuff as opposed to doing it in queue. In other words, you stuff one and you stuff two, and then they're separate, and then they come down, and then it gets to the place where those come together, and they just one comes from one spot, one comes from another, and they get put in that way as opposed to having a stack of twos and a stack of ones. And I mean, it just it's hard to you know what the root cause was of those kind of things. Staffing models. I mean, he's trying to grow. He's trying to get people. He you know I think everybody's struggling with that. Um, he has a fairly high retention rate of people, which is a really good sign. You know, in terms of that. So I think that's a good sign. I think that they've definitely tried to make sure that the people that they have who have, you know, higher responsibilities have a lot of experience and understand, you know, the whole process that they own and, you know, are engaged in even trying to improve it. So, you know, I think that's, you know, I didn't see anything, you know, in that regard at all. I think that you know, I think maintenance is always a challenge in places and equipment, and that's always an art, you know, really an art to get that done. But again, I just honestly have to say I know what I would have looked at and asked if I was in that mode. But that really wasn't why I was there. So I didn't, some of those things I didn't delve into. At the same time, I did ask some questions that were pretty related to how they do control processes and how they do maintain them. And they definitely understood the concept of what they needed to do to maintain the integrity of the process. So you know, it wasn't like, well, we just stick it in there and hope for the best, you know, kind of a thing. So so I think there's competence. I don't know, you know, how much documentation they have of their processes per se. I didn't ask that. That's often a thing that I would look at, you know. And in today's world, documentation of a process can be videotaping it. You don't necessarily have to write a bunch of things. I mean, there's a lot of ways you can do documentation, but the issue is to retain the knowledge, to retain it for the future. Someone could, you know, have a car accident and be out for 3 weeks, or you know, you always have to think of, you know, the impact, especially in a small business, you know, that it could be. So yeah, high retention rate. Yeah, yeah. No, I think you know, the one thing I did do, I looked at a video from 10 years ago that they did, and I I took some mental snapshots of people, and except for a few that have retired, just about everybody who's in that video is still there. So that was one thing I did going in on purpose to try to, I sought them out to see. So, you know, and Chad has he has a really good philosophy about giving people a chance because of his own personal, you know, history and situation. And you know, we talked about, hey, sometimes you get a guy who had a problem and he comes in and he's a mechanic and he has the aptitude and capability to do something that maybe someone who is quote unquote trained doesn't really get. So he gets the subtleties, you know, of those kind of things in an operation. I've been in too many bigger companies that really, and even in roles where it really doesn't fit, but I mean, they really get into, absolute requirements about college degrees, or they go in this mode where they only hire people from the military. Not that I have any problem with people in the military, very competent, but my point is they kind of get caught into these the latest greatest what everybody's kind of doing in the HR industry, and I think guys like Chad have much more instinct. They work from instinct and gut along with business sense, and I think those things actually really, for the investment you have and for the product you have and for the basically the overhead you're trying to maintain so that your pricing can be reasonable, although we can argue about $150 record, of course, but to do that right, and to, there's factors, there's automatically with all of these processes in manufacturing, there's quality issues and there's scrap and there's things of that nature. And they're pretty picky on their product in terms of rejection, and so that's a factor. They do factor that in, I'm sure, as any good business would, but they definitely know what their customer expects and wants. And there's a thing right now on Kind of Blue, some of the spindle holes are kind of tight. Well, I guess previously there'd been issues where they had been a little bit too loose. And so, once it's loose, it's over with pretty much. So if it's a little bit tight and a little bit snug, that honestly really, I mean, that was always for me, that was kind of like, okay, that's good. I know it's going to be well, centered, and it's going to be held and not spinning in any way. So, it's kind of the way you perceive that. So I think that's just a learning process that they have and had. And you can't. I was looking at a comment on Kind of Blue. Some guy made a comment, oh, I think it sounds awful, and I called them about it, and they said, well, if it's not defective in any way, I don't, what, it's because they pull the, when they're pressing, they're validating after 500 and listening to them and seeing if there's any visual or auditory defects, because they're only going to use those stampers up to 1,000, and then they change them no matter what. So the odds of it really being a true, I don't know what the person's expectation was, or I don't know. There's always outliers, and so you just have to. That's part of the deal, I'd say. But in more general ways, what kind of music do you all listen to? Let's talk about maybe what you would like to see coming out, whether it's Chad's label or anybody's label. Anything specific you might like to see coming out that either hasn't been out or hasn't been done well, or you'd like to see done better than it has been done. I'm kind of curious. I think there's certain ones we all kind of have on a general list, but anything specific that you guys have thought about that is not out there that, you say, I'd really like this to get, and it doesn't have to always be an audiophile treatment, but just really get a decent pressing of this, because that's really been a struggle, either from availability, cost, quality, whatever it was. I'm kind of interested to know what people are looking for and why, because there are some labels that are, like Speaker's Corner, you can actually submit a suggestion to them of something to put on their audiophile label. And I've seen people who have said they've done that and they've actually had them do it. I'm in the middle of pursuing one myself right now. So, I mean, there are some labels that's kind of what they want to be, listening to the voice of the customer. And then they can seek out whether, they're going to look at, how well did this album sell in the first place? How well does it fit our catalog? Then they're going to get into what would be the pitfalls of the relationship, with some of these acquisitions. You go, oh, that's Universal, or oh, that's Sony. So if it's Sony, if it's US, immediately you start to get into, well, I'm probably going to end up having to have a DSD for this as opposed to the original analog tape. So there's hurdles to do this. There's no doubt about that. So, but that's all in what they do to get to where they get. And I don't, I guess Chad made a comment. He's proud of the way they make their sausage, and I'm sure he really kind of meant the way they produce their product from producing getting the right engineer to do the mastering and getting beyond the mastering into the actual production and that type of thing. UHQR of earlier Genesis stuff. Okay, more of the early Tull records would be great. Now, here's an interesting that so they did one on Aqualung, as I recall, because I have it. And so, but a Genesis I hadn't seen. So you're talking about the stuff before Phil Collins, basically on Genesis, I'm sure. Yeah, and there's some really good prog rock kind of stuff in there. So yeah, but the reason I mentioned Tull is that wasn't recorded that well, and so Steven Wilson took that and remixed it. He went back, got it, and then it is mixes digital, but he remixed that, and it really brought out a lot of sounds that honestly couldn't come out in just a remastering process. And so, that's the thing about remixing an album versus just remastering an album. And so, I mean, the Steven Wilson remix of the Tull stuff, I think sounds fabulous. Now it's not on audiophile vinyl and that type of thing. It's all 33 RPM, of course. He did a really fabulous job with Chicago 2. If you like Chicago and you like Chicago 2, if you can find that album for $40, it blows the doors off of any version I've ever heard. And I've got US, German, Japanese, and they all suffer because the original 2-track that was laid down wasn't all that great. So going back to the actual multi-channel where they actually take and mix the instruments and the vocals and everything to a little different level than that, it tends to draw things out and make things more, the imaging kind of changes, and they call it almost reimagining, the way it would sound. And so I think some of that kind of work, remixing, some things just need it. That's the bottom line. And I mean, as great as Tull is, and I mean, I think I've seen Jethro Tull more than any other band. I mean, when in the 70s, I was going anywhere, they were anywhere near Chicago, I was going to see them. And they play, my God, they played in a I think it was a converted roller rink or something, or skating rink in Highland, Indiana, or Hammond, Indiana. And, that thing might have held 1,000 people, maybe 1,200. I don't know, but they came there and did a great show. And, a year later they were doing Chicago Stadium. It was just like 12 or 15,000. So, Ian Anderson was touring. I was in a store today and they had Jethro Tull under T because a person apparently thought that was the name of the artist. So it's funny. You find these things and you think, well, they don't get it. They don't know that that's the case. Right. Of course, Black Sabbath was under S. I mean, it was just crazy. But yeah, I would love to see those. I would love to see those as well. I'm just trying to think. There's a lot of albums that were done early on. Chicago 1, MoFi did, in their better years, and that's a great pressing, but it's expensive. I mean, it's 150 maybe. To get a VG plus near minus copy. I think you could get like the Steven Wilson remix, you could get a $40 copy of that. So, I think that, Chicago catalog, I love Chicago, and anything they do, I would, buy pretty much redone, but it got better as time went on. But the first couple albums were, Chicago's kind of unique. The first 3 albums were double albums. The fourth album was, I think, a quadruple album, or at least triple, Carnegie Hall. And then fifth was finally the first single album. So they were like pumping out, multiple double albums right out of the box, which is like, whoa. But they did a lot of, their music was somewhat different back then. I know. I saw Analog Productions reviews that claimed they weren't repackaged, but they were because they aren't in tight shrink. Oh boy. Okay, well, that's not what they do. That's just not what they do. So, yeah. I mean, that's the thing out there. You get a little bit of a mix of things, but the I say the credible folks that review these, do shootouts, that really are into it. They're really going to tell you whether it passes muster or not. Um, and so far, anything I've seen pretty much on the kind of blue 45 RPM is that it does better than Chad's 33, which is to be expected. I mean, okay, it should. Something's actually wrong if it isn't better because just the physics of it says it should be better, right? Friday music pressings. Man, I'm glad you brought that up. We talked about that last night. So there's a guy named, I'll butcher it a bit, Joe Regano. I just can't remember exactly what his Italian name, and he is often the mastering engineer. And this guy, I think on another show, somebody was saying, he's a musician. I think he's not really a mastering engineer, and it shows. Now, when he is teamed with someone else, they sometimes team him with usually a band member from the album that is being redone. It's better. It's more credible. But when he's Joe Ragoso, I guess maybe is his name. But when he's alone, I just kind of go, I bought a few. I learned my lesson. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice. No, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And that's what it was. I was like, okay, I gave him, I think, 2 shots. So I gave him an extra shot. I thought it was just a one off, but then I started to realize, and other people were saying it too. So, see, we got here James Brown, Funkadelic, Depeche Mode, Smiths, and The Cure. Yeah, The Cure. I know The Cure, some stuff of The Cure's on Music on Vinyl, and we can debate whether, I mean, Music on Vinyl is not an audiophile label, so I'm not going to say that they're an audiophile label, but they do some decent pressings. They have some really decent packaging. But some of their stuff, everything I think is digital pretty much with them. So I mean, that kimono's been off with them for a while, but I can't say that it's consistent. I mean, I guess what I would say is consistent is that they're above average and they're decent, but they're typically not going to be the go-to unless you can't afford the go-to, then it's a fair compromise with them, I'd say. I'd like to see some of the classic Pablo Records recordings. Okay. Think of what artists are on that. Let me look here just to get a perspective, because I certainly, is that the one that has like it looks like a dog, a jazz label. Okay, here you go. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, I see what's on there. Yeah. Yeah, that's a decent catalog. Now that would be in Chad's wheelhouse, I'm sure. Yeah. 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 See it get done proper. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, there's labels, there's a lot out there obviously to choose from, and it's again, demand. Um, I don't know. I don't know that one of the things I think about is whether or not there's been any process for inquiry toward customer bases, toward what would they like to see coming down the road. I don't know. I mean, I know Chad talks to his customers. I know they email. I know he knows his best customers, his top customers, probably the ones that spend the most or have the highest end systems. Um, so he knows those, but and I'm sure there's some discussion about what should come out or whatever. I'm sure, but just a general take on that. It's something that I would think would be interesting. I know Chad said he put out and I'm going to forget which one it was, but it's going to be in the video if it isn't in one already released. But he did one, and it wasn't one he would normally do, but he had a lot of demand from his customers. He did it, and when he compared that to the original and that, he kind of went, "It's not really that much better. There isn't that much there to get out of it because of the source and because of the kind of music." But he did it anyway. But he kind of said, "Hey, I let people know, hey, this isn't going to give you the kind of delta, the kind of difference in you know amazing sound that you're used to coming out of here because there was only so much I could squeeze out of this lemon, and so that was the case, I think. ORG list the other day, surprised by how much overlap Ryan K. Smith is cutting. That's interesting. Yeah, interesting analysis. Yeah, I'm sure there's always some overlap. We know that happens. We see kind of blue, on MoFi, which boy, every time I look at a review, probably 1 out of 5 somehow references the muddy sound of the MoFi in comparison. So, this is a little bit of art, a little bit of witchcraft, a little bit of how it comes out and the way it goes in and what gets done to it. It's not cut and dried. I don't think that's the bottom line. I think the Verve series. Forgot Bill Evans Trio 65 was done by. Okay, there you go. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, there's plenty to choose from. That's not the issue. It's like I'd really like to see Etta James at last redone properly. You got to go to the OG to really get a good one of that, and that's a little pricey. I'd love to see that one. He did. Oh, the Muddy Waters. Okay. So was there a good marked improvement in those then? Um, Small Axe, was there a market improvement then when he did release them? Because the recording was subpar. Amount of new pressings that are warped. Hmm. Yeah, some of that is. I mean, geez, some of these that to do shrink wrap, they just take it a little tight. The way some of this stuff is boxed and handled and stored, and even in the stores. I mean, I think handling is an issue. I don't think the sensitivities are exactly the same. Maybe among the way they're handled in shipping and in UPS trucks or FedEx trucks, whatever. I think there's um, some gap there. I'd say. I mean, marking the packaging is extremely important. About do not bend, do not put on its quarter, do not keep in extreme heat or sunlight, keep in extreme sunlight, or whatever the risk properties are of the product. Those need to be very well laid out because A, obviously you want them to not be subjected to them, but B, if something happens, you have more of a claim then against the carrier if they are responsible for that. And then after the carrier, the people that store it maybe in distribution or whatever it is. So that's something that I think is, because the question is, are they coming out of the plant that way? And unless something is drastically wrong, they really shouldn't be coming out of the plant that way at all, come out of a press that way. So Jazz reissue sold more than the AP cast. Yeah. Do I have my AP Cat Stevens? Yeah, I do. I got it right here. I think it's worth a few $100, or at least theoretically. But I really wish they would have done Teaser and Firecat. But yeah, that was a little bit surprising that didn't sell more than it did. I mean, I was surprised hearing that. Maybe that's why it's worth so much, but dishing is annoying. Okay. Okay. Warp. Yeah. Dishing is different than a warp to me. I mean, it's a warp, but it's a warp usually means, kind of uneven, but a dish is usually a concaved kind of a thing. Yeah. That is a process control issue. Yeah. That is absolutely is process control. Yeah. There's no doubt about that. That's there are consequences for long and short cycles in the presses. There's no doubt about that, and that's another area of the process control, making sure that things are well calibrated and accurate, and that there's no error occurring in that. In more modern equipment, some of those checks and balances are microprocessor controlled much more closely and computer controlled. So they really do have theoretically have a better chance at not having that happen. I mean, when you start to get into manual things and manual settings, and if people can hit a lever or do something to something affects it that is not obvious, then and there's no warnings for threshold violations that occur in time or temperature. That's where it can help. Yeah, plant rushing. Okay, so now you're getting into now you're getting into some of my my big issues with manufacturing in general, and rushing is definitely one of them. Um, yeah, they always pretty much came back from the grave. Well, yeah, as long as we're above ground, I guess that's true. But it's a little caveat. But yeah, it is. That creeps in. I think it does creep in. Has Chad expanded his pressing plant? He has an old section and a new section. So yeah, I think he has. I'm not sure exactly what date it was that he did that, but yeah, he has a new room, a new pressing room from the main one that was in the building. It kind of had an L shape, I think, and then they added on and moved back into another area. So, and he's going, and again, you can increase production by shifts as well, which he's got two right now, looking to go to a third shift, as well. Um, but yeah, rushing, cutting corners, whatever you want to say in that. I mean, you're baking a cake. The cake has to be baked for a certain amount of time. It has to have the right ingredients. You got to make sure that the timer is right on the stove. You got to make sure that the heating element is properly calibrated to the temperature. If you're supposed to cook it at 400 and it's actually heating it to 370, then you're not going to get the outcome that you expect, because it's not going to be heated enough over the time that you give it. And you can't always compensate under heating with time. Sometimes there's a certain way it has to form given the temperature. So those are time and temperature are have to be really well regulated and well maintained and validated. So that to me is a key thing. And I cannot tell you how many times I have run into people who just assume because something has a digital readout on it that there's no chance of inaccuracy. Well, it is going to display whatever it thinks is coming back from a sensor, but the sensors can have issues. So it really needs that system needs to be made sure that it is accurate. And if it's like settings. Are the settings lockable or are they open where anybody can change them? For example, that's an important process control thing to maintain that no one can come in and make a change to that for whatever reason. It doesn't matter what the reason is. The issue is if it's set and it's got to be between a certain temperature, then that needs to be maintained and regulated and kept from being changed. It's kind of like it's kind of like your thermostat, right? You go into places, you can't make it cooler, you can't make it hotter, or whatever, because they maintain a control on that. So a lot of vinyl orders being requested to be pressed. Yeah. Yeah, if you meet deadlines. Yeah, well, every manufacturing company, whatever they're producing, are always in that same mode. Whether it's sometimes it's the end of the month, sometimes it's the end of the quarter, sometimes it's a commitment that was made to, a customer. There's a lot of, I would say Chad has more capacity to run in the daytime than he, in other words, press wise, he had presses that weren't operating for some cases under maintenance. Some are always, they kind of rotate maintenance. Maybe the other, has to do with personnel. But my point is, I think he has more raw capacity capability. If all the ingredients were there, the demand was there, the vinyl compound was there to make it, and the people were there to run it. So as a customer consumer collectively, we have to push for new titles. Times change. Yeah, and I think you will see, I think, some broadening of the catalog a bit here in this next year, um, with the way he's approaching things. I think so. I think you will see that now, whether it's always to everybody's liking or whatever, but I think they've had some, I'd say redundancy, but they've had some focus and some, I say narrow, but some tighter reins in of what they've done, and I think that's about to widen out some, and I think they know that. But I will tell you that some of that stuff is easier said than done. When you go after something that's really been out there a while, but maybe hasn't been done, or maybe it's something that, there's difficulties making the arrangements. You could want it all day long. So, it's just it's a little bit of, I mean, they could work on a deal for 6 months or something and not go through because of variety of reasons. So, it's a little bit dicey, and from what I see, obviously Chad does most of that himself, so that it personally has so much time. So I remember laughing at pressing company when some of the 45s were warped, arguing with them about the cost versus total requested order. Okay, Jason. Yeah. Well, what is my history of collecting vinyl? Oh yeah, thank you, I appreciate the question, Bill. um okay. That's really nice. I appreciate that. So I started collecting in 63. I was born in 57. So you can do the math. 7 years old. I started buying 45s. The Beatles hit. I like Ricky Nelson. That was probably the first stuff I bought was Ricky Nelson and whatever was in the top 40 back then. And then the Beatles came in January of 64. And I had actually heard about the Beatles before they hit. And here's the reason, backstory. I lived in Gary, Indiana, and there was a record label that was started in Gary, Indiana, by an African American husband and wife called VJ. And the VJ label got the licensing right to the Beatles in, I think, June of 63. And so they put out an album, and I have it. Where the heck is it? Hang on. Maybe is that my Beatles stuff? Yeah, I guess it is. Oh, now I'm really taxed here. Hang on one second, Danny. I can't see these. They're backwards. Anyway, introducing the Beatles. You've probably seen it. I'll pull it out, but it's that was released on VJ, and it gained a little notoriety. A few of the singles came out, like "She Loves You" came out through Swan Records out of Philadelphia, and "P.S. I Love You" came out of Tolly Records. There were these off labels that were getting Beatles songs, and they got the right to license them and to make them just individual songs here and there that weren't making it in the UK or just barely making it. And so they took a chance on that. And you know, they got a little bit of airplay, but nothing major. Obviously it was major when, you know, they came with the Ed Sullivan thing and all that. So and to answer your question, I started collecting in 64. So I bought a lot of singles, mainly bought singles. Albums weren't as big a thing back then. I bought a few albums here and there. I did buy some Beatle albums. I had a turntable that wasn't that great early on, so I tended to wear them out. So I I bought a few extras. So I actually have some sealed Beatle albums from back in the day with 2.99 on them. So uh and so, you know, I started buying records then. My goal in life was to be a disc jockey, which is okay. So I used to play records and play disc jockey downstairs, and you know, that was how I just really was kind of cocooned with music. And so I liked a lot of the British bands, a lot of the, you know, top 40 hits. That was big, you know, AM radio. I lived near Chicago, WLS 890. You know, at night you could hear it even down in here in Texas, 50,000 watts bouncing off the ionosphere. So then I started getting into rock and, you know, Zeppelin and all that stuff. Went to a lot of concerts. My first big concert to go to was The Who in, I think, 71. It was the Who's Next tour. And so I just kept buying records, and I worked when was 15. I started working at Dairy Queen. So I took all my extra money and bought records, and I just kept buying records and kept them with me all the time. Then when I went to college, I dragged them with me. And then when I left for my first job in Florida, I took them with me, came back, moved to Denver, took them with me. I never got rid of them. And so I just kept my collection together, and got better turntables pretty quickly. You know, I got dual turntables. I was using Advent speakers, KLH speakers, built Dynaco Heath kits, amps. I had a guy next door to me that helped me with that, and dual turntables, Shure cartridges, you know. So I was, you know, getting better at taking care of my records, of course, and the equipment. So let's see here. What else did you ask? Sorry. What got me into YouTube? Okay, I know that was part of it. I saw that at the end. So that's how it started. That's how I started collecting. I got into CDs, of course, you know, when the 80s hit, and still did some vinyl, but vinyl was a lot more scarce. So I did a lot of CDs. I'm big into quad records. I have a quad receiver, a Pioneer QX949. So I have a lot of quad albums. There were three formats of quad back then. SQ was kind of CBS Columbia. QS was multi-label kind of thing that Sansui had started, and multi-labels picked it up. I think, four Steely Dan albums, the first four Steely Dan albums, quad versions. They're great, and they have different mixes on them. So if you ever see one and you would be interested in what a different mix might sound like a little bit, pick it up. It's not huge difference, but it's enough to enjoy. And so I have a lot of quad, and so what got me into YouTube really was I I was selling some records, some duplicates and things, and I on a Facebook page called Second Chance Records, 2CR. And the reason I liked that group was they had a lot of people who were new into vinyl and wanted information, and so I started doing some auctions and information videos with them. And that's how I kind of got rolling into this. And someone was kind of like, you know, you really ought to just do this on YouTube, you know. And I'm like, no, you know, kind of a little scary. But and so eventually, you know, it got to that, and I said, what the hell, you know, give it a shot. But the reason I like that group was the guy who runs it, Armando Cardoso, we donate part of what we make to charities, some battered women's centers and shelters and things like that. So it's, you know, it's St. Jude. What I mean, we part of it is to donate and to help others. It's not just raw, you know, just go make your money and have a good time. Plus, you get a lot of good deals on that channel. I mean, you know, you can buy. You know, he was selling music on vinyl records the other day for $22 that everybody else is asking 36 for. So I mean, Good people, doing the right thing, trying to help people who are new and make sure they don't get screwed. Talking about equipment, talk about decent equipment without spending an arm and a leg. So anyway, so guys, that's Cliff's Notes version, but thanks for asking. Okay, they got that one. He can partner with other labels just like he has done with the new Verve, yeah, Impulse Cover. Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah, he can. And I think that's a strategy. Now that, having a pressing plant, you can be, you can be in the mix, but maybe not having to have all the other overhead of going through the licensing and all that. You can just be part of the process. And I think honestly, if he can get his production to where he wants and the people resources and everything, I'm sure he's looking at expanding as he can. I know he is because I know he's doing something right now to improve his capabilities in the the prep of the materials that go with it and everything like that, the printing and all that. Um, so I started collecting early. Did you see any of these early rock or pop X? I did. I saw, yeah, a lot of rock. Zeppelin. I mean, I saw from 70 on, I saw most of the biggies at least once. I went to a lot of concerts. I had a lot of friends that wanted to go. And so, yeah, I did. And that's why it's so hard, frankly, to go see the Eagles now. I mean, I'm like, okay, that's fine. I mean, but I saw them when they were in their heyday, Hotel California tour in 76. Why, it's kind of like some things I just want to keep the memory, what it was and go from there. Right. I am Parlogram Auctions. He's fabulous. Right. He really, um, there's one about the early capital management missing the wave. Oh God. Yeah. Big time. Yeah. That and Decca passing on signing them than EMI did. That was the other one that Decca had a chance at the Beatles and didn't. There's a lot of, there's a million stories related to the Beatles. It's unbelievable. I picked up well, let me go grab it real quick. I'm going to show you something I just picked up today. Okay, gang. So these are some books that came out by a guy named Bruce Spicer. And these are books on each of these albums, talk about the history of it, how it was put together, just all the raw details about these albums. And this was, I got it half price books. If you have a half price books anywhere near you, might check. See, these were $40 for 4 of them, and they normally go for, I think this box is 80 normally. So it literally was half price books. But so I thought that was, I've been looking to get those. It was cheaper than Amazon. So yeah, so I mean that channel is the preeminent Beatles channel. He knows a ton, and really I really relied on him a lot when I looked for the blue box set, the BC13, the box set. Got a hold of one of those finally, and so a lot of his information helped me do that. So yeah, inflation is happening everywhere, isn't it? Although I did see gasoline today for $2.99, finally below the $3 barrier. So that was good to see. Yeah, that is an amazing channel. I agree. I just I got to be careful when I go on there because I've got to make sure I have time because I just want to keep listening and watching and learning, because there's never enough to know about the Beatles, just from what they had going. Great new subject matter to suggest. It's time we VC group up and pick the 20 best and/or which series is best over the last 2 years. No, that's great. That is a great idea. Yeah, how can we do that? Maybe through a poll or, some kind of method? That's there's the Jazz Bum guys. Maybe I don't know if you are part of that group, but you might want to suggest that to them because they're fairly active, and I think that would be something right in their wheelhouse. So you might think about that. Those are great guys. Did I buy it? Yes, I did. Thank you for asking. I did buy. What the hell did I buy? What did I buy? I know I bought Steely Dan's Everything Must Go, their last album. I know I bought that. That was on my want list. I have the record store day of it, but I really think that this pressing, from what I've read and heard, is fabulous. And no, I didn't hear any of that over there. Like I said, it wasn't like they were pushing anything. They just, so I got that one. Steely Dan, Everything Must Go. I got Curtis Mayfield Superfly, which it is a double disc, and Mike from the In Group, Mike Esposito, added it to his best 100 all analog recordings last week. I bought a multi-channel SACD of 3 of them, actually. I bought Pink Floyd's Wish You Were Here, multi-channel, Eagles Hotel California, and Fleetwood Mac Rumors in multi-channel. I'm getting into a little bit of multi-channel digital just because I like 4-channel, as I told you. And, these obviously are, easier to decode because they're discrete channels going to each speaker. So I decided I'd buy a few of those. Just kind of enjoying that kind of a resurgence. You had 100 plus of the 2 separate Blue Note reissues. Wow. Yeah, it is funny. Sometimes you go and you export your list and then you go, wow. I mean, what hits me sometimes are my duplicates. I'm like, oh my God, I have I have a Heart Dreamboat Annie fetish, and I have a Steely Dan Can't Buy a Thrill fetish, and I've finally slowed down on my Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon. Ever since I got the Pro Use series Japanese EMI, I'm pretty set. Pretty done chasing that one. Does that expire? Okay, I didn't know what day that expired, David C. Did indeed pitch the topic to Mazzy this morning. Okay, good. Okay, great. To Mazzy directly or on Rachel's Ghost, David? I'm not sure. Speaking of the groove, what's your thought on Whatnot auctions? Okay, that's great. You know, it's how do I put it? It's the the seller. It's always the seller. Who are you buying from? There's a lot of, I think there's some, and I'll use the word very loosely, fly by nights, in the sense that they're not well known. They may be very credible in their area or whatever, but substantiate. Because I've thought about going on Whatnot to sell. I mean, I think there's an 8%, a commission that they get. Plus there's 3% for the credit card use, so they handle all the transactions and they send you shipping labels to put on, and so I mean, they do earn, some of that, but I really would only do it with someone that I knew, like the In Groove or whatever. I tried a couple people early on just as an experiment, and I wasn't too greatly satisfied. And the shipping costs were, if you buy enough, the shipping averages out. But if you buy 2 or 3, you're pretty much, going to pay probably, I think 3 albums I think I paid $14 in shipping when I could have paid like 6. So that's part of where they get you, I think, So anyway, So Whatnot is a platform. I'm sorry, I want to finish the thought here. The Whatnot is a platform. The only thing about it, I mean, it's kind of cool because it's really quick feedback, and there's a bid, and you touch a little yellow button, and it tells you what the bid is. So let's say it says $17. You touch it, it's yours for 17. Now it goes to 19, or some increment. It varies based on, I don't know if it's a setting by the seller or if it's increment automatically that they have. I don't know, but it increments up, and then the timer will restart to some degree, whether it's 10 seconds, 5 seconds, whatever, and then someone gets a chance to outbid you. And it kind of keeps going like that until that time window starts to shrink of reset time, and you got to be quick. The other problem is you can bid on something, you just kind of touch your screen and whoops, I bid on the thing. So you don't want to carry your phone in the bottom right corner when you're on Whatnot. You will be bidding your butt off. So, so those anomalies kind of aside, I mean, it's kind of a cool little platform. It's a rush. You got to be careful, man. You know, if you're a person who can really get going, like gambling kind of person, you can get sucked up in it, and you can overpay very quickly, because your mind starts saying it's only $2 more, and it's only $2 more, and that's what happens. But as a platform, it's pretty decent as a platform. But again, it's always buyer beware. Know your seller. Okay. During Rachel's morning live video chat, someone asked Mike about the best VU and Nico reissue. Yeah, he said German pressing was good. Yeah. Well, German pressings are pretty good. I mean, they don't get a lot of times Japanese pressings get a lot of merit, and they're good, they're clean, they're quiet. But man, if you want to hear any bottom end that you don't want to get, I mean, in general, and again, it's generality, but probably 35 times out of 40, you won't get as much bottom end as is in there because and I've been told this by some people in Japan that from where I do work for, we have plants everywhere, and they told me, hey, they just don't like that sound, and so they like it a little brighter. So they'll tend to press up the bright just a hair, and they'll definitely roll off at 50 hertz, 40 hertz, whatever. They'll roll off. So the German pressings don't do that. They're a lot more to the point. Okay, great. Nice, David. Thank you. Pop goes to 60. YouPoo channel predicts the vinyl bubble fad will burst soon. Do they mean in sales, Jason, or do they mean in price, or what are they saying there? I hadn't heard that. Pop goes to 60s. I'll have to look at that. I will make a note of that. It's like the stock market. I can't predict what's going to do tomorrow or a week from now or whatever. So, I mean, I think those are always okay. I mean, everybody has an opinion. I always say when somebody says something like that, I said, you know what? Eventually they're going to be right. It's like someone says it's going to rain tomorrow. It's like, yeah, eventually you're going to be right, and that's just it. We don't know. And there's, look at the people that bought MoFis to flip or to sell right now. In most cases, they're underwater somewhat. And, I have some that I thought I would, be able to sell, and, but I just hadn't pulled the trigger on it. Now it is where it is, but okay, that's, there's upsides, there's downsides. I can't really do much about it, but for tracking my media. So you create custom fields. Okay. So do you do that in the spreadsheet that you have already, or have you added fields within Discogs? Because if you can do that, I'm not aware of that. Yeah, what I paid, I put that in the notes section. I do get that. Guy paid 500 for 150 records. Well, that could be okay. And Mike can sell and talk up the record. Yeah, that's true. That's Mike can give you as much information, or he wants to, or yeah, exactly. And yeah, and it's conversation. The thing I do like, they do talk about things usually before he puts the bid, before he starts it. Um, you know, that's for sure. You drive to Austin, okay. Waterloo down. Yeah. So I'm, 3 hours from Austin. I'm in the Dallas area. So yeah, there's quite a bit of activity in Austin. They got a record show here in a few weeks. This weekend, San Antonio, and in I don't know, 2 to 3 weeks. I just can't remember when it is exactly, but there's one in Austin as well. Check it out. Um, I don't know when it's going to happen. To be honest with you. Oh, Mr. Rosa missed leaving. Thanks. Uh, AV design builder owner operator. Your mics are upgraded. It seems. Yeah, I got a Shure. It's called an MV7, and it the nice thing about it is it does USB and it does the regular plug-in for a mic, a mixer or whatever. But it does USB and it does this what I'm doing through right now. And it also, why I have headphones on, I have a wire. It goes through and I can hear myself through here. So they're great. They're like 250, which compared to the other model, the bigger model, it's like 399, and they sound great. So I would tell you they're it was made a huge difference. Believe me, best 250 I've spent in a long time. Yeah, you find it funny some reissues are worth more than the OG. Yeah, yeah, it's weird, but there are OGs, especially from the 70s, where the vinyl in the US was really crap. And that was because they used recycled vinyl. Recycled vinyl was used because of the gas crisis. That's why Dynaflex came out of RCA. I think I mentioned this last night. Dynaflex is 120 gram, but it was pure vinyl, and that's why they made it thinner, because to save it, to preserve it, and get more life out, or get more pressings out of it. So a lot of vinyl was trashy, and so sometimes the OGs suffer not from the press being bad in and of itself, or the mastering being bad, but that it's just on crap vinyl. So that can happen. You've grown so much since the Fofi controversial. Thanks, David C. Yeah, that kind of kicked it off. That really hit me hard in the gut in a way, because as soon as I saw Mike Esposito's video, I was like, this offends the hell out of me, because I've been buying them since they started, and I knew, I was starting to think about all the booklets they had and all the information they had, and I said, man, they were telling you everything about everything they did, man, and now what the hell? Then I started looking at the later stuff, and I'm like, man, they're telling you less and less and less, and then I knew the half speed mastering piece kind of went away, and they didn't really say anything, and I'm like, this wouldn't surprise the heck out of me at all, because there's a pattern here, a real pattern. So, yeah. So thanks. I've, I just am trying to hit topics that people care about, and that's why I need input from you guys. It's really important to me. I'm not a big jazz guy, for example. I'm not a big classical guy. I have some, and I love what I have, because I really love the recording and the instruments and the presence of them. And when I really want to listen strongly to something, I'll pull those out and listen to them, because that's the enjoyment I get out of it, versus the music kind of is not, where I'm really, my head's at usually, but it really does bring me to a place where you really respect artistry, I would say, is what really happens there. So, yeah. Popular info. Yeah. And it's funny. The, yeah, I don't know what to make of it exactly. I guess I'll say I'm really glad that some of the youth are getting into it, but at some same time, some of them really can have a very I don't negative toward. I was on Rachel's Ghost, and I think Stunty said something about, he made some kind of stereotypical statement about anybody over 45, blah 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 blah, and I thought, I just I could, I don't want to stereotype people under 45 or under 20 or whatever. I think it's good to learn from people who have been there. You can make up your own mind what you want to do, but if And if you want to get taken advantage of in this market, whether it's records or equipment or whatever, you're welcome to do that. Go right ahead. And don't listen to anything I got to say. That's fine. But there is a lot. There's always been snake oil, and there still is snake oil, and that type of thing. So, don't really need one from you, Chad. Yeah. Very nice. Yeah, my very first. Thanks for participating, David. I'm glad you're here. I yeah, I just did this the other day, and I really enjoyed it. I've been on Rachel's Ghost, and I may mature this to a you can join kind of thing, but yeah, it's just good. I really like to get input from you guys and questions and what. Dynaflex pressings were horrible. Yeah, a lot of them were, not all of them, but I mean they. Um, but that was the root cause of why they came to be. Just that's why I want to explain to you why that happened and what they were trying to resolve at the time, what was going on in the industry, and then this other side of the U.S. pressings between, let's say, 74 and 78 or 79. In there, they really were hit and miss because they were using recycled vinyl. So, like I said, you literally get an album and you can go, look at that. And you go into grooves, and it was like a label from another record that was in these grooves. You could see a part of a logo, or it was crazy. It was crazy. Yeah, and yeah, somebody said something here about the MoFi debacle. Yeah, I look at it two different ways. I look at it as a a consumer of audio, a listening consumer, and some of the stuff that has come out, even in spite of using DSD, sounds amazing. So it sounded good before, it sounds good now. Um, uh, MoFi, when they came in and they were MFSL at the time, they were really the first big audiophile for pop music or rock music, and they brought to the party, the half speed mastering and the quiet vinyl, the JV Super Vinyl at the time. They called it kind of the JVC vinyl at the time. And they had UHQR. They only made like 8 of them though. So I mean they started it and then they stopped because I think there were it wasn't really in some cases as significant of an improvement as I think they had expected. So um so my thing is I listen to the music, and some of their pressings are better, some are not. And in general, you can say that about most labels when you think about it, right? That's just the way it is. And so, in that regard, they are someone who produces something. And I don't always enjoy a meal at a restaurant that I go to because sometimes it's not as good as other times, or it's a different kind of meal than I usually get, and it's like, oh, not going to do that again. Okay. So it's that kind of thing. But when it comes to knowing your customers and being upfront and really being engaged with your customers, that is where I think they really fell off the planet. And there is no way in my mind that what went on wasn't known. In other words, wasn't a decision that was made to not say these things, to not make them known, to in some cases put out even in templated emails or whatever, saying things like there's no digital in the and it was. Now I don't know who wrote that. I don't know who told them, but somebody in the chain knew, and somebody allowed that misrepresentation to go on. To what degree the employees knew or were engaged beyond the engineers, who obviously knew and were engaged, but maybe they didn't know customer service had a template that said, but you got an engineer on videotape saying there's absolutely no digital. So, it was like Chad said in the video, it's like, hey, you could take an MP3 and make it from the original master tape. That's, that the question is it's the whole series. And as I've said, it's the series before the 2-track tape that you use to make the mastering from. What made that? Is there digital in the mixing and all that up front on the recording end? I mean, that's part of the formula too. We're focused here on mastering, of course. So, the MoFi thing, they've made about every mistake a company can make during, in between, and after. And now they're going to live with whatever the consequence of that is. I don't want them to go out of business. I really don't, just because they're a player in the product market, and I'd hate to see that. I'd hate to see the people suffer for the stupidity of leadership, and I guess that's where I'll put it. But it's going to just have to play its course. But it teaches us a lesson, I think, and that is trust but verify. And I feel stupid because I knew they didn't tell you the half speed mastering thing. But again, when I first heard this from Esposito, my antenna went up and I said, okay, last time the half speed, I kind of just didn't see it. This time I'm hearing it and I'm like, maybe there's something to this. Okay, sorry, it was maybe too much, but anyway, uh, Mike has such a following, people will buy anything. You're talking about Mike Esposito, MMFS, I'm assuming. I didn't know if you meant buy. Yeah, I guess you meant buy. You meant Esposito. Is there an optimal number of records? Do you have a number that you would like to keep your collection around? 2000 is about, for me, I mean, where, that's about it. I start peeling down and duplicates out of there at that point. Big influencer. Okay, so MMFS is saying that Mike's a big influencer. Yeah. If it's Mike Esposito, well, Michael 45 is an influencer too, I think. And I'm not. That word just to me is a little bit. I don't know. I'm not comfortable with it, I guess. I really just want to tell you what I know and what I think, and you take it and you agree, disagree. That doesn't matter. And if I don't know, if I say something, it's pretty much I try to make sure I know. If I say something, I might say I'm not sure or whatever. But I really hate to get in the middle of some of these things. But unfortunately, when it comes to truth, that's a biggie for me, and I really expect people to be honest and upfront. And if people don't like what they have to say, that's one thing. But so let me go down here. Sorry. Am as much visual with music albums. I buy music history books. Okay, books on yeah. It is. You're right, David. It's there. It is a whole experience. You can take as little of it as you like, or as much of it as you like, but there's plenty there to chew on. There's no doubt about it. And that's why I got these Beatle books, just because I'm like, what a compendium, on those albums, just to really kind of immerse myself. And some of those are coming, up for their anniversary, so it's a good time. MoFi knew if they announced they were using DSD masters, sales would suffer. I totally agree. Some good sounding re-release. Yeah. No, Jason, you're right. I'm sure. I am sure that was a calculated decision. But, there's certain I say rules and law in the sense that they just naturally happen. And usually it's the truth always comes out. Now, you got to put an asterisk on the Kennedy assassination, I guess, at this point. But anyway, or where COVID came from, maybe as well. I guess seems like that's not too important anymore. But it was calculated. I have no doubt. There's no way in hell that wasn't calculated. I mean, it came out. Here's how calculated. Okay, so first Mike said he thought it was 2015. Then Jim Davis came out and said no, it was Tony Bennett in 2011. Well, now you got Natalie Merchant in 2007 with Tiger Lily that they show came out DSD 64. So my guess is they stuck their toe in the water in with that release and waited to see if there'd be any pushback or there'd be any reaction. Did they notice? Kind of thing. Then they went, okay, didn't everybody likes that? Okay, so I mean, why there's a gap there. Why? I mean, there may be others now that they just haven't told us about. But my point is it's even before he said it was. Or they made a mistake on that one that they put up. I keep checking it. It still says DSD 64 for Natalie Merchant, Tiger Lily. So it's just a conglomeration of. Thank you. John Boy, it's at 44. Super proud of me. Thank you. I hope you have the Michael Jackson Bad album. I do. And it is. Quincy Jones is such an amazing artist. I want to someday do a profile on him. He's amazing. You know, a lot of people don't realize that he was a producer for Leslie Gore in the 60s. It's My Party and I'll Cry If I Want to. Um, Judy's Turn to Cry. Those he was the producer. I mean, the Soul Bossa Nova, which is Austin Powers' theme song. That is Quincy Jones. It's called Soul Bossa Nova. Some people don't realize that. He's amazing person, musician, producer. Great. Thanks. I appreciate you appreciating my honesty. I don't know what else to do. I mean, it's I don't want to have to worry about what I said, or if I said one thing to one person, something else to somebody else. It just doesn't. Life's way too short for that. Just weren't able to see behind the curtain. Minimal exposure of staff on Twitter, low YouTube. Yeah. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Yeah, and like I said, I always try to think the best of people of business. I mean, I try not to, be a raw skeptic. And so even then, like I said, but when I heard it, that's why I said it clicked, and I went, hey, that's what they did on the half speed. So I think when they got by Music Direct, I bought by Music Direct. I think, it's a different kind of business. I mean, that's a selling equipment model that happens to now own a record company. That's really what's going on there. Mike Esposito said Sunday, he didn't get the impression Jim Davis is that engaged in the MoFi piece. Really, he's a businessman. That's why the Absolute Sound had a Q&A. Well, those were submitted questions. From what I have heard, they were submitted and then given answers back. Well, it may have said Jim Davis, but I don't know that Jim pontificated all those technical answers. I'm sure he had some help with that and made it represent, him, representative of the company, to quote, say those things. So, it all goes back to the Wizard of Oz. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. I think life is a series of Wizard of Oz movies with the group Toto in the middle of it, but that's just my impression. So that's good. Find it hard to believe that Chad was surprised. He yeah, I know I get your point, but reading body language, I think um, I think it's kind of like you think the best of everything. You just kind of. I think the Sony thing, in terms of the way they were starting to behave about tape availability, I think had people scratching their head a bit. I think, but I just think that people thought, it's like, this is mobile fidelity, this is analog, this is, they kind of are the standard bearer. I just think it was like hard to believe. Just I think, I don't know, because I just think that I didn't get the read in any way, shape, or form that he expected this to happen. Okay, sorry. Is all right. He's had some enjoyment. Don't agree with all his video. Okay, well, you won't agree with all anybody's. Yeah, right. Okay, his Asia and DSOTM shootout. So I'd be interested to hear what your take was on those, Jason. Which ones I can't remember off the top of my head. If he went with the Cisco Asia or what he said, but yeah, the DSD timeline isn't correct. That's correct. Technical production request. Please reduce down your channel intro music or raise your intro seg and then your main seg to match. Well, I wouldn't think the intro seg and the main seg would match. I mean, that time wise, I already did reduce my intro. It was longer, believe it or not. It was, yeah. So I mean, I have done that. I'll take that advice. And again, my email address is sound@safeandsoundtexas.com, fully spelled out. you can email me any ideas and thoughts, or, I mean, I honestly appreciate the input. I'm doing what I'm doing just out of what is where I'm at, right? And I'm open to changes. I'm open to doing things a little different from a variety of ways. I got feedback on the mic and took care of that, and David, that's not a criticism. I understand it, and it may be, and if it is, that's fine. I don't. I just, it's an honest statement, and I know you mean it in the best possible way. So. Um, Anything else you think, or any other ideas, please let me know. I'm really open to that. To sell an inflated prices on. Is that true? I have no idea about what Jim Davis does. Horde at One Steps. I mean, okay, it could be true, right? I mean, who knows? I don't know. I can't honestly say. I'm trying to think if I've seen someone say they got one lower than 100, is what my brain is starting to process. I saw a few recently with Eagles that were in the 300s. I know that, but yeah. So I don't know. Secondary market. I figured that's what you meant. Quincy was Gil Evans, Oliver. No, yeah, he something else. Okay, a few years ago, a sound engineer friend told me that the one steps were BS. He told me to be careful spending my money on them. So here's the thing. Well, the one step process has to do with the elimination of the mother and the father in the production of the record. It has nothing to do with the steps that get you from tape onto the lacquer per se. It has nothing. That's not where it's at. It's from the lacquer forward. So it goes from the lacquer onto the stamper, and the mother and the father are eliminated. And that's when they talk about, I don't have the plates, or I don't have the parts or the hardware. Those are the mothers and the fathers that they're talking about when they say, that we got all the classic record plates, or we got we got that from them, and we have those stored when we bought classic records. Those are the mothers and fathers. So the one step eliminates the mother and fathers. So what you're really doing is having to make X amount of lacquers in order to get X amount of pressings off of the stamper. That's the whole issue with Michael Jackson. How are you going to make that many lacquers if you have to run the tape each time to get a lacquer? And you get 1,000 records off of a stamper. So you need to run it through 40 times to have 40 lacquers essentially. And 1,000 again is, and Chad, for him at least, 1,000 was a top number. They change out boy, it's always when you're the stamper. They change out the stamper at 1,000 or less. And they start looking at 500, and if they see any issues between 500 and 1,000, they change it out. And if it doesn't have a problem, but it gets to 1,000, they change it out. So my point is, they probably need more than 40, because you probably would never always get 1,000 off of the stamper. There could be an issue. So, it makes sense that you don't have to create those, and it eliminates that in between. I say etching, but the actual mother father. But the problem is the reproducibility down the road is gone, because the mothers and fathers are the things that gives you the reproducibility of higher quantities, because you make more stampers out of it. So anyway, that's it on that. I mean, some people don't like that process. The ones they really believe in the mother, father, and that, and I get that. And for longevity, that's definitely the right way to go. MoFi, I think they were just trying to get as most direct as they could from the lacquer straight onto the stamper, which, it makes sense in theory, that's for sure. Thank you, David C. Produce. I appreciate. Oh, Level Audio. That's what you meant. Oh, cool. Okay. No, that's really good. I really appreciate that. No, you don't have to worry about being a critiquer. You can, I mean, hey, don't. I mean, uh, I'm all ears. I'm a I'm a virgin in the wild right now. Be careful. Mikey went with the age of Cisco and the 30th anniversary of DSOTM. I think the OG of Asia and the OG UK. But good luck getting yeah. And so, I haven't tried them all myself. So, I mean, I'm going to say that right out of the box. I think the OG of the Dark Side of the Moon is certainly solid. Certain, what is it, B2, A2 pressings, stamps, I think are really solid. I think the advantage the 30th anniversary might have is quietness. And I keep bringing this up because there's a noise floor in vinyl. And, if the noise is present, it affects how it sounds, what you end up hearing. So, some of the older stuff has a little higher noise floor, and that can be the difference. But yet, when you review it, you say it sounds better. See, I'm a big person that I listen to the lead in groove. I listen to the quiet sections. I listen to the transition between tracks because that gives me an idea of the noise floor of the vinyl. You're not going to hear it in the middle of songs. And that influences what you end up hearing. And so, my point to you is it may be a product not of the fact that it's a better stamping or, whatever. It's just that the vinyl it's on may be better. So, I mean, that is an element that a lot of times I think is just totally thrown out of the discussion. The quietness of the vinyl, and it does have an impact. There's no doubt in my mind. As far as Asia goes, um, you went with the Cisco. See, I haven't heard the Cisco Asia. I couldn't begin to tell you. Hey, I have an early press. It sounds great. I have a press from Canada on yellow vinyl that sounds great. So I don't know. I don't know what the Cisco sounds like, so I can't compare it. Oh, there we go. David, I've seen just now 10,000 subscriber VC contest, very detailed. Wow, that does. I'm going to have to look that up, David. No, I hadn't heard. I know who he is, but I didn't know he had a contest to get to 10,000. I could tell you folks, I struggled. I started March 1st and I struggled to get to 100 at first. It was mainly say people that I knew or people, I almost had to beg. But when the MoFi thing hit, because I was out the afternoon of when Esposito did his that late afternoon, early evening. I did mine, and it was like that Friday, the day after. This was Thursday late. The next day, I was at my daughter's house, and I'm watching this thing go. And then Michael Fremer makes a comment, and I'm like, okay, you've made it. Michael Fremer's commenting on your page. Of course, he was really angry for, going with the rumor and going to disrupt people's lives, and I get that, but I'm not a journalist, and I said if this is happening, so yeah, sounds. I almost got that 30th anniversary. I saw it at a show, and I went in another area. I came back a half hour later. It was gone. I kicking myself. Travel. Yeah. Yeah. I go to Europe. I should be going in October again. So how many shops have changed there? Like here in the US? Oh yeah. Thanks. My video's over there. Yeah. Yeah. That's where I got the Led Zepp, RL version for $40. VG plus. That was a grail, for sure. Hi, Nick. How you doing? He was 5,000 1 year ago, he admitted, and 10,000 now. Thanks for subbing, MMFS. Thank you very much. Yeah, and it's I want to get to 2,000 now. I mean, it's just like Rachel did. I mean, everybody, that's just kind of the way you go. I mean, it is. But I, I want it to be a little bit organic, if you know what I mean. Tell your friends if you like it. They may sub, and that's fine. I don't want to manufacture, things. I want it to be much more organic. I really, it means a lot more to me because I know you're here because you want to be, or your friends are here because they want to be. And that really to me is more important than the numbers in and of themselves, because you can have people subscribe that really don't want to be there and really just want to give you a hard time, and I don't need that. VC folks brought Washington Post to our community. Yeah, I knew that article was being worked on because I was told by a few people that I know that they were interviewed. So it took about a week and a half longer to come out than was expected at first, but that didn't surprise me. You got to check sources. You got to, he said he had trouble getting through to, MoFi. I mean, I've tried. It's like, there's no point in it, frankly. But yeah, but you notice it wasn't in the business section; it was in the entertainment section, which is an interesting thing. It is entertainment too, but um, it certainly gave Mike Esposito some exposure. There's no doubt about that. Definitely, yeah. Yeah, both Mikey and Mike 45. Mike 45, I think, actually was first, in the MoFi thing. And I think, yeah, they have really given us a broader look at things. And I'm trying to do the same thing. I mentioned last night, and first Ambrosia album, Get It. it was it was mastered by Doug Sachs, engineered by Alan Parsons, kind of a prog rock, and had a single in there called Holding On to Yesterday. Fabulous sounding album. It's got like a flap fold down, like a comes to a V point kind of flap, kind of ambrosia. So that's one that I can tell you about just from a. I mean, you're not going to see a lot of them, but when you see it, just it's really well recorded and pretty good prog rock actually, and a few ballads. I mean, it's nice music. David Pates, I can't remember his name. When you need a name, you sometimes can't find it. Um, Great. I just feel bad because they shot up the price on some records. Oh, they did. Okay, you're saying their recommendations did that. Well, yeah, that's I say unintended consequences because it's not, okay, Mike, you might say Esposito, of course, he runs a shop that's different, but Mike, 45, he's just given, his impressions. Um, you know, Vinyl jackets have built-in trackers inside. Yeah, well, they could be. They could be putting stuff in the cover. You'd never even know it these days, right? Built 180. I've got that one sitting on top of my turntable to spin next. They took a shift there. I think they changed labels. The first two albums they had, they were a prog rock group, and then they got into more soft ballads. But the first two albums were on 20th Century Records. And around that same time, Alan Parsons was doing the Tales and Imagination of Edgar Allan Poe, which is a great concept album. If you like Poe stuff, you'll find it pretty amazing. But and so Alan Parsons was available and did the engineering for them. So, but they kind of shifted a bit. When they changed labels, they got a new producer, got a little bit of change in direction. Um, from Freddie Pirro, I think was their producer on the first two, and it was good for them. I mean, it fit a model of top 40 kind of um, adult contemporary kind of sound, and that was great. They weren't going to compete with Yes and some of the others in prog rock, that was for sure, no doubt. Got to run. MMFSS, thank you for joining and being a subscriber. Thank you much. I'm going to put the link to that. Whoops, that's not right. Sorry. I was going to copy and pasted one of David C's comments there. Let me pull up that real quick. There it is. So I'm going to put the link to the Chad Vinyl Vault again in here. that you subscribers can get to early before everybody else. If you'd like to bookmark that or just open it up and go there or whatever, that's what it's there for you to take a peek at. Um, and Yeah, first thing he touched, he stood over Led Zepp classic records. He said, "Lift that up." I'm like, "Hey, you want to take this?" I'm like, "Yeah, right, of course." Yeah, but it was fun. It was interesting. Yeah, this back and forth. I like going through some topics here. Just make sure I haven't missed anybody. I've been trying to keep up. It's not like it's crazy like Rachel's. I don't know how she keeps up, to be honest with you, but gets a little crazy on that show. You're welcome for the link. Um, so yeah, it doesn't it doesn't it doesn't bode well right now, in my opinion. That as I've gone into record stores in the last 6 weeks or so in a variety of cities here in Texas, that pretty much they all have been saying that the demand for OG vinyl has gone up, and that when I look in their new arrivals, I notice a marked increase in records of ones that you normally see there will be 20-25% higher, and they're like, yeah, that's the demand they're fetching right now, because people are there's kind of this aura about you're better off just get the OG, because you don't have to worry, it's going to be analog, all these other things. It just and these some of these people are people who never would have bought a MoFi in the first place, or a Speaker's Corner, or Acoustic Sounds Analog Productions one either. I mean, they would that, but it's just the kind of the wind's blowing in that direction, and people just grab onto it. And now that's starting to affect being able to buy vinyl. You know, remember Chad dogging? Oh, Bernie Grumman. Well, let's face it, Ludwig pushed the envelope quite a bit when he mastered that. I mean, he trying to defy physics a bit, I think. Um, yeah, I mean, if you've got the equipment that can play the RL, it's great. But there was a reason they pulled that back. I mean, it was not playing. There were people were taking them back in scads. I mean, because they just couldn't play. So, if you had the equipment to play it, it sounds great. You're right, it does. And but I had to. I think I went from 1.75 to 2.0 grams on my cartridge just to keep it in there, honestly, because I could tell it was starting to want to take off on me. So it's called a hot mix for a reason. There's no doubt about it, right? Yeah. Yeah, I feel bad, Jason, about that too, actually, because that is I think, with COVID and everything, there was a lot going on, and the, consumption levels and people buying, and, it's kind of a give and take. And some of that's, I say drying up, but it's, there's only so much out there in good enough condition, right? Let's face it. That's the bottom line, if it really will play well. And so it does leave a situation where, I'm one that's like, well, if I see it, I'm going to buy it. And, I bought a Tupelo Honey today by Van Morrison, because I've wanted one for a while, and the cover was not in great shape. The album was in decent shape. It was $10, but I said, I'll clean it up, and at least I'll have one. I've been wanting one for a while, and then I'll keep looking, and when one comes around, I'll just pass this one on. But I looked at it and said, wow, $10 for that. But they're just going for a lot. They have been going for a lot. I'm trying to find Van Morrison's greatest hits on LP, and it's ridiculous. So, you wouldn't think that would be that big of a deal, but it is. I'm curious if anybody here is a Discogs buyer, because one of the things that really concerns me about Discogs is um, when I'm going to buy something, and now I'm zoomed into a certain pressing, certain matrix markings and everything, and I'm zoomed in on that, and then I go and I'm going to order it. Am I going to really get that specific, dead wax version or not? I mean, are people good enough, and who are the sellers who are good enough to where you could go, I know that if I buy from Cloudy Rain 99 on Discogs, that person knows their stuff and they nail it. And if you buy a certain pressing, that's what you're going to get. And their grading's right and all that kind of stuff. Because I just think sometimes I just wonder if some of these people just, they pick one of those albums, they go, oh, yeah, it's a US 73. Okay, I do it. They don't know whether it's a RCA record club or a Columbia or a Pittman or a Monarch or a, whatever. They don't know. Have you had any experience trying to buy a specific pressing from Discogs, and what has your experience been? Because I don't have any. I haven't bought off of Discogs, um, and I would like to have confidence in that, especially if there's a buyer or two that are really good, a seller, I mean, that are really good, because that would be good to take advantage of. But yeah, I don't want people to pay. Yeah. An OG, a white label, and I don't mean promo, I mean the original Eagle album was on a white Asylum label. Um, that's in good condition. $20 is probably about right. But a repress, yeah, I would say a repress, they shouldn't, have to pay more than $12, 15 maybe. Yeah, Jason, I saw his thing. I think his thing was, again, and maybe it's lost in translation. He was focused on OG, really OG. So maybe the same principle applies, that they're not, checking the stamping, that it matches exactly whatever. So he seemed very zoomed in. Well, that was the context of what he was trying to buy. I get it. But that kind of was what led me to my next question. Is that only, the OG piece because they're premium priced? Because I'm thinking if they're premium priced and they're OG, you'd think they'd be even more diligent about being right than they would for, an average album. But maybe let's say I want a Monarch press as opposed to a press from somebody else. And are they actually going to, is that what they're going to have? So, and William, it ended up being the one you wanted, so you were satisfied and that worked out. Yeah. Well, a lazy buyer is usually somebody, who just wants the album. You know what I mean? They're not that picky. They just, they're the ones who go in and click and go, oh, it's a US. It looks like it was one from the year it came out. I'll pick that one. And they'll go look which has the cheapest price, of course, and pick that one. So that's fine. Them not being picky, they're probably not going to be picky about what they get unless it's really in bad condition versus what was said. But anybody that takes the time to say, I want this pressing, then, you got to have a seller who knows what this pressing is. So, one observation from my reissue collection that may resonate with you. Yeah, David. Yeah, you received it. All good. Great. That's good. And William, have you bought anything else from that person, or was that just a one time? Or, I mean, I'm willing to give it a shot. Sure. I mean, that's not a problem. But I think, yeah, the confirmation thing is going to be the biggie. And if they have a problem doing it, I guess that tells you all you need to know. That's part of it as well. Yeah, reissues are, I mean, the truth is most reissues I look at and I kind of presume they're digital. I just kind of go, okay, 95% chance or better that they're digital. So, okay. That's just I'm more concerned about whether the vinyl is quiet, to be honest with you, because I don't know. I just think that bugs me a lot more. I guess one time purchase, but I'm looking at other records from other sellers. Okay, yeah, okay, all right. Well, it is a. I mean, Discogs is a unique environment. And again, Discogs as a database is one thing. Discogs as a marketplace is another thing. Um, as a database, it's a godsend. Pretty much. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's pretty damn sight better than what we had before, which wasn't much, right? Houses of the Holy with okay, Porky Pecco etching. Went through many sellers to get an honest answer. Mm, yeah, I could see that. Buyer issue. If the album has not been pressed in 6 to 12 years, because most pressing plants improve vinyl pressing processes. You would hope and expect it, but you could improve the process all you want, but if the material they use for the actual record is not up to par or is lesser than what it used to be, for example, as a cost cutting measure, then okay, does that technology leap help you very much? I mean, it's again, it's the whole recipe and what goes into it. Um, and you got to be. I mean, the good news is in vinyl, there's only a few suppliers of the pellets, and the specs are fairly tight and fairly specific. And certainly, there's Chad's group has a very specific expectation for the material that they use, and that's really critical to it as well. It takes, like I said, it takes all of it. It takes, the guy in the plating department's got to, he's got to have that right. He's got to make sure moisture doesn't get on that stamper. I mean, there's all sorts of variables that add up to the end product. Yeah, there's a Houses of the Holy RL that's not too difficult to track down. Yeah, yeah, I think I might have one of those. Yeah, I got a physical graffiti first press out of Britain through a company back in the 70s. There was a company called Gem Records, JEM, out of New Jersey, and they imported records into the U.S. from foreign countries, as they were called then, Japan, Germany, UK, and I got on that bandwagon, to buy some of those. And I think Houses of Holy, I think was $12.99. I think the British copy, the first pressing. So it's worth quite a bit and sounds really great. But we just knew we didn't want the U.S. pressings when the vinyl was bad. That really was what started that. In terms of why were people even going after that, it was because the dissatisfaction with the vinyl. Try to get a Porky Paco. Yeah. Okay. Harder. Yeah. I don't know why when I see Porky, I think of the movie Porky's. Ah, that's fun. But yeah, so there was a lot of focus on imports back in the mid 70s, and then audiophile stores. And yeah, I mean, there used to be some really great high end stores, brick and mortar stores you could go into, and they'd have I mean, that's where they kept those and had those. And, you'd go, oh, pull whatever Dark Side of the Moon, let's say, as just an example, of course. Dark Side of the Moon, original MFSL, and what does it say? Audio, what's it called? Disc Records. This one's from Disc Records in Houston. $16.95. So back in the day, as they say. And so, but my EMI Pro Use, Toshiba EMI Pro Use Japanese version of that is to me the absolute best one. That one's decent, but it's not that's for sure. 9 children. I have 8 children, actually. If it says 9 somewhere, then my wife's doing something I'm not aware of. But anyway, no, I got 8 children, 10 grandchildren, soon to be 11. Yeah, I got one still at home. He's 22. And Jim yeah, okay. Mr. Mac, yeah. A lot of special order imports. Yeah. There you go. That was their deal. So, yeah. So, this gray hair has justification, just so you know. It's not just pure old age, it's had a little accelerant known as children. But yeah, and we homeschooled them too. So, kudos to my wife. She was amazing. She actually, well, David, you may be right, because we had 8 children and me, so that, I guess, that makes 9 children. Now that you're obviously my wife's lawyer, so uh, yeah, it's but time flies. That's the thing. It's crazy with kids. You think back, yeah, it's life is crazy. But the vinyl journey to me, and I said this last night, and I'll repeat myself: if there is anything that you've been looking for, that you're on your grail list or whatever, send me an email at sound@safeandsoundtexas.com, fully spelled out. I will write it into my want list and note who it is. And when I go shopping, I'll look. When I go to Europe, I'll look. I've gotten a lot of people albums over the years. And I really take a lot of pleasure in doing that, because I know how hard it is to find things. And, just it's as exciting for me to find it for somebody as it is for me to find it for myself. So, don't be shy. If you do have anything, especially if there's something from Europe, because, I just, it's pretty much grail time when I go there. There's a lot of stuff I find, it seems like. Jason, you've enjoyed chill videos. Too much drama with Rachel and Waxed. Yeah, I know that got a little, and I don't know if you were on there when Wax and I got into it about, all I was trying to say was I was hoping to make sure Mike, he represents when he does MoFis, whether they've been stated what their provenance is, what they are, just so people know. And that, Mike really wanted all this transparency because he started it, and we all want it. And it really got into a big tussle, and it really didn't need to. But I mean, I'll stand my ground. I mean, I do believe that's the best and right thing to do. And okay, that's my opinion. David, thank you. If you can help me in any way, I mean, great. I mean, please take advantage of that email address. It's I don't, I'm developing connections and visibility. I heard Mike Esposito call me Bianco on Rachel's channel. I wasn't on this morning, at least when he was on. And so because God knows he's not going to say the sound of Safe and Sound Texas. That's too much yet. But last night somebody asked me why I have that name, and it's not that I feel safe and sound in Texas. So it isn't. It's just that my work group area in manufacturing right now in consulting is safety, and sound is this side. So and the Texas thing is just I needed another modifier because LLC for Safe and Sound was already taken. So there's no political agenda in that. There's no dissing any place else agenda. It's just the name, Yeah. One more time with email. Sure. It's sound, the word sound at, and then fully spelled out, safe and soundtexas.com. Sound at safeandsoundtexas.com. You go to my about page on my channel, and it has it there too. So if you forget or lose your paper or whatever, thought about doing some vinyl shootout videos. Great, because I own some rare records. Really, Yeah. Yeah, I think, I love doing shootout videos. I'm in the middle of doing one with, oh shoot, Donald Fagen, the Night Fly. I just got the hold of the Japanese pressing about a week ago, and so I've been I don't have the one step, so I didn't make the one step, but I do have the MoFi and a European and OG US and the Japanese. So you can. I mean, I'm not. I don't have a collection like Mike Esposito. I don't have the access like Mike Esposito has. And I always say when you do a shootout, it's my equipment, my ears, my brain, what it tells me, and then what I come out with. And that doesn't mean that's what you're going to come out with because we have different equipment, different ears, and different brains. So I really, I did one on Hall and Oates, and I think I said, yeah, I like the RL Rock and Soul Part One, the RL OG better than the MoFi 2x45. Another guy said I really like the 2x45 better. I went back and listened to it and asked him about a couple tracks that, which kind of tracks, which ones specifically really can, speak to you. And frankly, on a couple of those, it was a lot closer than I recognized. But holistically, I still stand by as a total album, the RL was better for me. So you need to ask someone in the V to borrow their wife. Oh boy, that would be an ask, wouldn't it? Yeah, I mean, yeah, I've been trying to get one, and I tried to buy one. I thought the guy wanted 399. He turned out he wanted 599. I said, okay, we're just a little bit too far apart on that. You know, but it's a digital source, but it's a source digital, so you can't do anything about it. And that's the way it is. So, but at least let's face it, guys, the common person can't afford the one step. So that comparison in some ways is I'll give the fact that the Night Fly one step's probably better than any of the ones I'm going to shoot out with. So that's fact. Okay. But we're not talking about people that want to spend $600 generally. And I really want to be a lot more for the common person, to give them an idea, especially if the OG sounds really close and it's, a lot cheaper, for example. So, I don't really want to, what I really want to do is, and what I'm starting to develop is a bit of a rating system by category of certain things about the pressing. The brightness, the mid range, the bottom end, the quietness of the vinyl, the straightness of the vinyl, and come up with ratings on those and say, here's the grade, here's the report card for them. So you can compare that, what I think I'm hearing, a little more specific because there's a guy that runs an auction and I had to harass him, he'd go, and I think it was Japanese record. And he goes, this vinyl is beautiful. And I put a note like, I've looked at the gold mine rating system. I don't see beautiful anywhere. I'm not sure can you translate that into an excellent VG plus near mint? What is beautiful? I don't know what beautiful means when it comes to that. So, and the other thing is play grading versus visual grading. Is it play graded? That's one of the things I know a lot of us do when we do sell on that Second Chance record site. Play grading, we say, visually it's X and play grade it's Y, because sometimes they can look great and not play as well, or sometimes they can play better than they look. And playing it really is what you do. So I mean, it takes more time, but I think it's worth it. So. Oh, you tried to get Michael Ford. You tried to do that. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I got the 5.1 multi-channel Donald Fagen SACD, and it's a DSD. And I got to say, and this is true with a lot of the multi-channels, you hear things that you didn't hear as much in the other because they're split more, and so something that maybe is covered up a little bit because of a two-channel mix gets split out a little bit in the multi-channel, and you're processing, not a blended piece. Your brain can hear it distinctly through your ears from a separate direction, and so there are often things that you pick up on and hear that you can't quite hear distinctly. So that's an experience that you have too. Some people don't like that, and I'm like, okay, I mean, it's it's just a different experience. I'm not going to say it's a better experience. It's just it makes me realize that kind of think about it for a minute. If you could start peeling back the layers of the tracks as they were made and getting back to all the multi channels. You've probably seen videos of in studios where they shut off half of them, and then you hear just this and you hear just that. You're like, wow, I didn't know that voice. Just I never even heard that backing vocal before. Like the Eagles One Step, the first album, the Eagles One Step. I know that album well. I've had it, the OG, since day one, literally day one. I'll never forget. I remember when I bought it, and so I've listened to those songs over and over and over again. So I have a lot of muscle memory for them. But when I played the One Step, I mean, it was like instruments I hadn't heard pulled out, background voices, lead vocals, stronger, just a whole different experience. Regardless of how it got there, DSD, whatever, it definitely had more imaging, more depth, more precision, and a cleaner sound. And I thought, nothing could beat the OG. Well, I was way wrong on that. That's for sure. So, so Jason, what you tried to get Michael to do? What a shootout on Fagan? Or no, one step of Braxis. Okay, you wanted him to do one on the Braxis, I guess. Okay. Yeah, I don't. Everybody. I don't know how people make decisions on what they want to do shootouts on. I mean, I did one on the Eagles. I did one on Cyndi Lauper. She's So Unusual. I did one on Parsons, Eye in the Sky. Um, and that was the one where I had to say, hey, Speaker's Corner on this one, I wouldn't buy. And then I realized when I looked on their site, it was the only thing they ever made that had a digital source. And I'm not saying that's the root cause, but it is a fact, and it is really doesn't sound great. So I don't know. Apparently it was done on tape and digital at the time, which I guess Alan Parsons, probably being an engineer, he probably pulled out every stop he could. And I'm sure he probably wanted to have both to compare the technology at the time. I mean, people ran with digital back, and it was like the big thing, man. If it was digital, it was like that's the greatest thing since sliced bread. It just was the new kid on the block, and nobody ever really. It's kind of like it was. It was the convenience and the comparison of being able to just put it in your car, and I mean, there was all sorts of advantages. Not necessarily audiophile advantages, but operational advantages and convenience advantages. Putting 74 minutes onto a disc versus 20 or 22 on a side. And then, of course, you couldn't take it in your car. I had a chance to buy the Blood on the Tracks recently and didn't. I don't know if it's still available through this guy. I want to say it was maybe at 200. Wasn't outrageous. Yeah, I'm not a big Dylan fan, but some of his stuff in that period, Blood on the Tracks and Desire, I really, it kind of caught me at the time. It just kind of Hurricane, the boxer and that. Yeah, there was just certain things that, for me, it kind of hit me. Whereas, some of his earlier stuff was, I was kind of too young, I think, at the time to really take it all in at the time. And of course, his voice is a matter of acquired taste, I guess I'll call it, lack of a better term. How does it feel? That kind of thing, right? But his writing is just like, wow. I mean, he makes things so clear, and in some ways, the way he writes, he leaves, and it makes you think, and that's good. I mean, it's great to be entertained in music, but sometimes you got to kind of think about it too. And I'd like to see that more people wrote in a way that were, a little more meaningful. There's a lot of frivolous stuff that's out there, obviously, and it doesn't necessarily pay off. If anybody here in this group wants to get a one step of something that's been released already, and I've got some that are still sealed and willing to sell for under what I paid for them, for sure, let me know. Just to so you could have one, experience it, and see what you think of it. um, I think I've definitely got some Paul Simons, and may have Carole King. uh, I think I may have an Eagles also. I think I bought two of those. Dylan song, Dogs Run Free, from New Morning. Oh, okay. Yeah, I haven't heard that one, to be honest with you. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if they know or care. I mean, I don't. Yeah, I don't know. There's only certain artists seem very deep in the weeds on this stuff, like Neil Young. They don't often, I don't think, uh, see it on that end of the equation. But I know some artists are hugely engaged with the way it sounds, and what happens when it's made, and how it's mixed, and all those kind of things. Alan Parsons obviously is his background, given his background, it's a huge thing with him. And I was on a chat with Steve Westman out of Vancouver on the audio files. I think it was last Friday. And we talked about our like top 3 audiophile albums, and we also talked about the announcement of an Alan Parsons box set out of the UK, out of a company that I'd never heard of, frankly. And I told Steve, I said, well, a friend of mine from high school, her brother-in-law Jeff, is the lead guitarist for his band, Alan Parsons Band, when they tour. And I can tell you without any reservation that Alan looked this company up and down before he ever would have agreed to let anything of his, get made there, let alone, a box set. So, that's just, it's his name. I mean, it's a brand for him, obviously, but the sound is very critical to him. So, and then it turned out, he said, yeah, the guy from the label said that Alan had to approve literally every song that got mastered. So I said, yep, that sounds like Alan. That's exactly what it is. So somebody who does care very deeply in that. Yeah. Am I planning to buy any future one step releases? Yes, I am. I'm going to buy Thriller, because I know Bruce Sweden and Quincy Jones did a fabulous job on that album. And if if they can eke out more out of that, I want to hear it. That's the bottom line. I want to see if I can have the same experience with it that I have with the Eagles. That's why. It was a very, very well recorded album, and I really love well recorded albums, even when sometimes the material isn't what I like. And that material it's decent. Off the Wall maybe was a little better, but it's decent enough. And Bruce Sweden, I think, was just really strong, and he didn't get near the credit he should have, I think, but in his career. But yeah, I'm going to get that one. I'm going to get One of These Nights. I'm going to get Hotel California. I'm not going to get On the Border. Wasn't enamored with that. I don't think I'm going to get The Long Run. I think Crosby, Stills and Nash I'm going to get. But I think I'm canceled all my Van Halens. Those were pre-ordered just because I could, but I never was enamored with. There are certain albums I think that, I mean, I like them, but I don't like them enough to do that. But and do they really have the audio chops within the content of how they were recorded to really benefit from it? That's, for me. So those I don't. Those are kind of like, no, I'm not going to do that for sure. Um, but yeah, Thrillers at 33, so it's $100, but yeah, it's at 33 as opposed to 45. I'm not sure why that was decided to be done like that, or I have no idea to what degree anybody was involved with Jackson Family or whoever. I don't know who was involved with it, but that's 33. So it is a is a tad cheaper. But I'm going to be careful. I mean, with what I buy from them, but at the same time, I'm certainly not going to punish them in that regard. I'm not. Well, let me put it this way: I'm not going to punish myself. I guess a better way to put it. I mean, if I really like an album and I want to hear it as good as it can, and I know that some of their one steps, regardless of the process they use, have sound amazing, then other than doing it out of principle, I can't see why I wouldn't do it. And I do have a principle about it, but at the same time, it's like it's not like I want them to go under. I mean, I want them to be accountable, but I don't want them to go under. And I'm not going to buy anything I don't want to help them not go under either. So, yeah, I wonder about that one myself, Jason. I just, I don't know. Um, I've been on the fence a little bit about that one, but not in terms of desiring it, but just, yeah, the same question. Yeah, I knew what you meant. Yeah. And that's where, that again, that's where remixes come in, because you can, then you can really start to articulate some changes into the way it sounds. And, again, that's where Steve Wilson has done some amazing stuff with Yes. And it wasn't even really that Yes needed it as much. I don't think. I think the Toll needed it a lot more, but just reimagining a little bit, not too severely, it, and drawing out certain pieces of the puzzle in terms of the sound. I think that was what was really needed in those. And again, I don't even know if it's to what I need to look. Chicago 2, Steve Wilson, is it even available? I don't know. It was on Acoustic Sounds, and I grabbed it, and uh, and I went to go. I did. I went to go buy a second copy, and there weren't. It was sold out. It was gone. That was it. What the heck was that about? That's a quad. Oh, I forgot. I've got a lot of Chicago quad albums. A lot of them. That one didn't show up. That's weird. I don't know why it didn't show up when I looked for it. A couple of others did, but that one didn't. I mean, did I not put it in my Discogs and database? That does appear to be the issue. Okay. I probably played it so much that I, had it out, and I just was like, never made it to the stack to get put in because I've spun it so much. Oh, I got a tube amp. I got a share. I got a tube amp. I got a Sherwood S5500 III, 3, like 80 watts a channel tube amp. And yeah, it is late, guys. I know. Thanks. You're welcome, Jason. Take care of yourself. Great. So I got a tube amp, and boy, they really do. I mean, I used to have tube amps, so it's not a first time, but I mean, it's been 40 years. Yeah, 40 years probably since I've had a tube amp, at least, probably a little longer. And just, they really do sound warmer. They sound, just have a little different sound to them. And little more aura kind of sound to a little more depth and imaging. Really, really good stuff. And so I've been looking, and the problem is you keep looking, the prices keep going up and up and up and up. So, so I think I paid 600 for this, which was, I compared it to, eBay and it was definitely in the ballpark, and I was able to see it. Now, here's a weird thing. Okay. So I got it home, plugged in my phone on my turntable to it, and I'm getting intermittent sound out of one of the channels. I'm like, uh-oh, what when I get a pig in a poke? What? It sounded great at this guy's house. He was using little Minimus Radio Shack speakers, and it sounded great. And I'm like, what the hell? So I tried different cables. I got the same result. I'm like, oh, shoot. So I called the guy, and he answered, and he said, yeah, those, they need really short cables because the resistance on them, the way the way the signal was processed back then, it needed to have a really clean. He said, go buy the shortest ones that you can do to get to it. Because I was using like 6-footers. He said the shortest distance, and these also the heads on the actual red and white, they couldn't be huge because these things are really close to each other. The females are really close, so you had to be careful. He said, get the cheapest ones you can get short, 3 foot or less, and make sure the head's not too big, and try that. And I'm thinking, yeah, right, okay. Well, I'll be shit. I got a 3-foot cable from Amazon, cheapest cable I had, like $4, and I'll be damn, works perfect. So there you go. It was, you kind of think, oh, I need the better cables. I need not that they'd be longer, but but these better cables, you couldn't even fit in there. There's not enough room, but it was really, really kind of weird to have that experience of that happen. So, you're never too old to learn, but I must admit I was just a tad skeptical. I thought there is no way that's going to make a difference, and it made all the difference in the world. So the guy knew what he was talking about, and the good news is the guy services equipment too. So if I have any issues with it, I got to take it to him, and he said he used it in his actual office, but he upgraded to something and said it was kind of torn to get rid of it because he had, it was kind of like a friend, almost. So I told him I would pet it occasionally and make him happy. So, but anyway, so that's how it is in audiophile land. So yeah, I've got a couple amps I want to sell that NADs, which I love NADs. I've got 3 or 4 of them, and I'm just don't need the extra ones. I thought my kids would use them eventually in their homes and whatever, but they want these newer, sleeked out looking things that don't look all retro and everything. And so, yeah, I'll probably sell those, but I still keep my NAD. I still have an NAD. I'll keep it, and I've got my quad amp. I'll keep that for 4 channels. So you gotta have backups. That's what I always say. Just like your computer, you gotta have backups. So anyway, I'm gonna throw that address down into the chat one more time in case anybody joined, didn't see it earlier, or otherwise didn't know. This is the link to the Vinyl Vault for Chad Kassem, not Kasem, Kassem. And so you can get in there and take a view. It's a private link, and like I said, it won't be put up publicly until probably this weekend. So you can take a look at it. It's just a small thank you to you guys for being here and being part of this and hanging out with me generally and specifically on these chats. I really have gotten to enjoy this. And again, sound at safeandsoundtexas.com if you want to ask anything, or if you have any grail you want me to keep my eyes open for, please, not a problem. I'll do that. That's just a way to give back. So that's what it's all about. So until I hear from you next time, or you hear from me, we'll be dropping a video tomorrow afternoon. Well, let me think. When will it be? My days are getting very mixed up. It's not tonight, it's tomorrow. Okay, so it'll be tomorrow night. I'll be dropping the video for the next chapter, next installment, third installment of my talk with Chad. And what will it be? Let me see if I can just tell you real quick before I sign off. What's it going to be about? Because I don't remember. Um, Already recorded and edited. I just got to see which one it. They're all, they're all looking the same to me after a while. I've got so many. So pre-orders. No, I don't. I don't have it in the catalog yet, so I can't see it yet. But it's in there in my draft area, so I can't. So it'll be a surprise. It's going to be a surprise to me too. So anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out. And again, the link's there. Take it. If you don't get it for whatever reason, if you go into the about section of my page at the end of the text there, it's there. You've got to copy and paste that address. It's not a hot link, but it's in there as well. So for now, as always, Nick, thanks very much. All of you, take care. Have a good one. See you soon from the sound of Safe and Sound, Texas. Take care, buddy. Take care.